transfer had been Dorian Vance's idea, and Ambassador Kael Rians had objected to it from the moment the paperwork crossed her desk. Earth's Outer Colonies Oversight Board had assigned him as her personal attaché during the Havoc's trade negotiations, and she had made her opinion of the arrangement clear within the first 10 minutes of their first meeting. Humans, in her professional experience, were talkers, negotiators, mediators, paper pushers, not fighters, not in the way the situation might eventually require. She had a Havoc's-issued security detail, a treaty-protected transport, and 14 years of experience mediating disputes across 3 hostile trade sectors. She did not, in her words, need a human note-taker with a gun. Dorian had listened to the entire assessment without changing expression, and then asked one question. Had she read the intercepted communication regarding the Ashkeri Combine's interest in the Havoc's mineral rights vote? She had not. The Ashkeri Combine did not send soldiers. They sent retrieval teams, specialists trained to remove a single obstacle from a negotiation, quietly, before that obstacle could cast a vote. 3 negotiators from rival delegations had vanished in the past year, each just before a vote that would have gone against Ashkeri interests. None had been found. Kael had gone quiet after that. She hadn't apologized. Attaches, in her experience, exaggerated threats to justify their assignments, but she'd stopped requesting his reassignment, which Dorian counted as a reasonable outcome. 6 weeks of routine sessions followed. Committee meetings, treaty drafts, one contentious dinner. Dorian sat in the corners of rooms, said little, and carried himself with the unremarkable posture of a man whose job was mostly paperwork. Then, on the night before the mineral rights vote, the Ashkeri came for her in the private hangar beneath the embassy. There were 6 of them, Ashkeri retrieval specialists, lean and fast, carrying suppression rifles built to disable rather than kill. A living negotiator who never made it to the vote was worth far more than a dead one. A body raised questions a disappearance didn't. They'd sealed both hangar exits with portable barriers, cutting off the transport bay entirely. It was clean work, the kind that required knowing Kael's schedule down to the minute, which meant someone inside the embassy had sold it to them. What the retrieval team hadn't accounted for was that Kael was holding a data slate in her free hand containing the finalized mineral rights framework. 6 weeks of negotiation compressed into a single file she'd insisted on carrying herself rather than trusting to the embassy servers. And what they hadn't accounted for at all was what Dorian Vance had spent 9 years doing before the Oversight Board reassigned him to what he privately called the quiet work. He'd clocked the barriers going up before the first Ashkeri operative cleared the loading ramp. He'd already mapped the hangar's sightlines during their first week there. An old habit, one he didn't advertise. For transport crates near the east wall gave him cover and a blind spot the Ashkeri hadn't accounted for in their entry pattern. He had 11 seconds before they reached Kael's position. 11 seconds was enough. The lead operative registered him a half-second before Dorian reached her, which was enough time to recognize the threat and not nearly enough time to respond to it. Dorian didn't rush. He moved the way people move when years of experience have taught them that hesitation costs more than the threat itself. Measured, economical, using the crates and the hangar's narrow catwalk supports to control which operatives could reach him at once. The suppression rifles were fast and dangerous, but they were built for open engagement, not for a corridor collapsed down to 2 meters of clearance by cargo containers and a man who understood exactly how to use that. The fight took under a minute. A minute was a long time against 6 trained operatives in a confined space, and Dorian came out of it with a cracked rib, a suppression graze along his forearm that had gone numb in a way he didn't like, and a growing certainty that his knee would need looking at once this was over. What he didn't come out of it with was anything that changed the outcome, because the hangar's geometry, the very thing the Ashkeri had used to trap them, had become the thing that trapped the Ashkeri instead. When it ended, Kael was still pressed against the transport frame. The data slate held so tightly her knuckles had gone pale, staring at Dorian with the specific look of someone rapidly revising 6 weeks of assumptions. He checked his ribs, decided they were bad but functional, and turned to confirm both exits. They knew the schedule, he said. We need a new route to the vote chamber, and the embassy needs to know their internal security's been compromised. Kael was still staring. You've done this before. The attaché work? No. A pause. This, yes. She stepped away from the transport frame, taking in the 6 disabled operatives with the focused attention of someone recalculating everything she thought she understood about the man in front of her. You knew the layout of this hangar before we ever came down here. That's the job, Dorian said. Being in position before you know why you need me there. They had 6 operatives. Sealed exits. Full knowledge of my movements. You were standing near a support column, Dorian said. That's not a weakness. That's cover. The hangar did most of the work. Kael looked at him for a long moment, at the graze along his arm, at the way he was favoring one leg, at the total, unhurried calm of a man who had apparently built an entire career around protecting people who spent most of their time insisting they didn't need protecting. I owe you an apology, she said finally, for the note-taker comment. You were working from what you had, Dorian said. 14 years of negotiation experience is real. It just doesn't update as fast as a current threat report. Kael absorbed that without the defensiveness he half expected. What happens now? We get you to the vote chamber, report the security breach, and find someone to look at this arm, Dorian said. In that order. She glanced down at the slate still locked in her grip. 6 weeks of work. A framework that 3 rival factions had tried, in increasingly direct ways, to prevent from ever reaching a vote. Now the exact target of an extraction attempt hours before it mattered most. They knew exactly what I was carrying, she said slowly. Which means whoever planned this knew the vote was going to pass. Which means the framework matters more than whoever authorized this wanted us to realize, Dorian said. Kael straightened, the composed diplomat reasserting itself over the shaken woman who'd been pinned against a transport frame minutes earlier. Dorian recognized the shift, the particular kind of resolve that shows up when someone decides the work in front of them outweighs whatever just happened to them. Then we get it to the vote chamber, she said. That's the plan, Dorian said and started walking, already knowing the route. After a moment, she followed. The mineral rights framework passed the following morning, 11 hours later than scheduled and under embassy lockdown, but it passed. The security breach was traced to a mid-level embassy logistics officer who'd been selling Kael's schedule to Ashkeri intermediaries for the better part of 2 months. Dorian's ribs took 4 weeks to fully heal. Kael rewrote her quarterly assessment of the attache program before she left the sector. She never told Dorian about it, but the following month, his assignment requests started arriving directly from her office. No committee review, no oversight sign-off, just a message and a departure time. Some acknowledgments, he'd learned, didn't come as a straight thank you. They came sideways, in the form of someone quietly deciding they trusted you with everything, without ever having to say so out loud. He found that more than enough.